Now on 960 The Patriot, it's the Middle East Radio Forum, your chance to talk about the turmoil in the Middle East. To call in live, dial anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free at 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com. Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening from. Don't you just love to hear that introduction, knowing that there's another edition of Middle East Radio Forum coming on the air? We are now solidly within the 18th year of broadcast. Hard to believe we are the longest-running brokerage show in the history of the state of Arizona. I can't speak about other states, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're included in that statement. Now, daylight savings time has gone into effect in the United States, other than select places like Arizona. So if you're listening in Arizona, no change. But if you're listening elsewhere, it's the same time Pacific now, and it's 3 p.m. Eastern daylight time. And I understand that March 26th is the date when Israel will go on daylight time. So right now, Israel is 9 hours ahead of us. After March 26th, it will be 10 hours ahead of us. So make sure you understand when the show is going on in your time zone. I thank you for listening. I thank you for supporting the show. We have a great show for you today. We have Devin Sper. He's been on the show before, not lately, but he has been on the show before. He's the author of a great book, Future of Israel, and I'm going to give away 4 copies of that book to callers who ask pertinent questions, the first 4 callers. But first, as usual, we have Yoni Titi, often known as Yoni the Blogger. Yoni, are you with us?
I am, Bill. How are you?
Well, you always depress me, but go ahead. That's your job.
Well, get ready to get depressed because it really upset me when I read this story. Interpol has dropped the arrest warrant for Akram Tamimi, who orchestrated the bombing at the popular pizzeria in Jerusalem, Sbarro, in 2001. This bombing murdered 15 and injured scores more. By injured, I mean missing arms, missing legs, missing eyes, missing internal organs, and lives just totally messed up. At first, I was upset with Interpol, but then I thought about it. Israel had her in custody, sentenced to 16 life sentences, and released her as part of the Gilad Shalit prisoner release. Tamimi's husband, also a convicted murderer, posted the following on his Facebook page. After a legal battle that lasted a year and a half, the defense for freed prisoner Akram al-Tamimi achieved the erasure of the red notice issued against her by Interpol. Our struggle will continue until her file is completely closed, and we will meet after our prolonged separation and enjoy the free, stable life for which we have yearned. What about a free, stable life for the victims, both living and dead? Tamimi currently lives in Jordan, where she has become a TV star. Tamimi said in an interview with Hamas, she stated the following: "It was a calculated act conducted with conviction and faith in Allah. A jihad warrior is always ready for martyrdom, imprisonment, or to succeed in the mission. I succeeded in overcoming prison, and I was released. Why should I be regretful?" You know, I remember when Israel used to hunt down murdering terrorists and kill them. But then Shamir went to Madrid thinking he could play a rope-a-dope like Muhammad Ali against the stupid American government that was pushing a two-state solution. He opened the door for what has followed. I remember when talking to members of the PLO was a crime, but then Shimon Peres and Yossi Beilin and others started meeting with Fatah, the PLO, in Oslo. Why didn't the Likud ever prosecute these traitors? Because the Likud has always been a bluff, sort of like most Republicans in the USA. So Tamimi is free and a star in Jordan, and Israel lets her live. If Israel ever was tough and not a bluff, I am afraid due to the peace process and our so-called friend, the United States of America, along with so-called Jews in America that are traitors to the Torah and the Jews of Israel, Israel has been gelded.
Well, Yoni, thank you for your comments. I never feel very good after I hear from you. I shouldn't say never, but often I don't. But you tell it like it is, and I think it's very important for the audience to hear what you have to say. thank you very much, and I look forward to being on the show with you again next Sunday.
See you next Sunday.
Okay, Devin Sper, how are you today?
I'm good, Bill. How are you?
Well, I'm doing okay, I have to say. Devin, I very much appreciate you're on the show today. You've been on the show before, but not lately. You wrote a terrific book called The Future of Israel, and I have 4 copies I'm going to give away to the first 4 people who call with pertinent questions. It's got to be a pertinent question. So make sure you call if you want a copy of the book or if you'd like to ask him a question. You've written an interesting article, Dismantling Success, the Biden administration's Mid-East policy, and that's why I wanted you to be on the show today. Let me start off by asking, what can we learn about the direction of Biden's Mid-East policy from his foreign policy appointments? And if you could flesh that out a little bit by talking about who those appointments are, that'd be terrific.
Sure. So, for example, he appointed Robert Malley, who was the person who negotiated the terrible Iran nuclear deal, and he's appointed him again as a special envoy to Iran. Basically, all of the appointments that Biden has made in Middle East are former Obama administration people, and so we know what we can expect from them. Let me give you one example. Another example, his name is Mahar Bitar. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. And he was appointed by Biden as Senior Director for National Intelligence Programs at the National Security Council. Now, that's a very important post. The Senior Director decides what operations the Foreign Intelligence Services will carry out, what information will the President see, and so everything is funneled through him. And let me tell you about this guy, Bitar. He's a Palestinian American. He's an anti-Israeli political activist. In 2006, he was a student at Georgetown University, and he was the leader of the anti-Semitic Muslim Brotherhood-aligned Students for Justice in Palestine. And as such, he organized the so-called boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign against Israel. And he chaired a BDS conference where participants were discussing and indoctrinating Christians to believe that Israel has no right to exist.
Okay, just so everybody's knowledge, tell us what BDS means. I don't like just to use initials without explaining it at least once.
Boycott, divestment, and sanctions.
Thank you.
So he had then got a master's degree at Oxford, where his thesis was on the Nakba, which is the catastrophe in Arabic, by which they mean the founding of Israel. He was also on Obama's National Security Council, and he played a key role in the passage of UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which labeled Israeli neighborhoods in unified Jerusalem and Israeli towns and cities in Judea and Samaria as, quote, flagrant violations of international law, unquote. So this is the guy through whom all intelligence is going to flow to Biden. And you can imagine that anything favorable to Israel will be censored and everything favorable to her enemies will be passed on.
Okay, Devin, you may not know, but can you give us at least your speculation or your best understanding of why such a person would have been appointed into such an important position?
It's a very good question, because Biden himself is not anti-Israel. And neither is Blinken, his Secretary of State. They're basically sympathetic to Israel. But they've surrounded themselves with people from the Obama administration who are not, who are anti-Israel. He is simply the third Obama presidency. And it is not so much Biden, as we know, is running the show. And these people are very anti-Israel. And though Biden's instincts are good, his policies towards Israel will not be.
Well, so who is running the show? You say Biden is not. Tell us who is, in your opinion.
No, I can't even hazard a guess, but it doesn't appear from what we can see that Biden is really in charge. But that's speculation. I can't say what, that's my supposition.
Okay. Let's move on. Should we expect the Biden administration's Mideast policy to differ radically from that of the Trump administration? And if you would, give us a little background on the Trump administration's policies so they can understand any contrast that you're going to make with Biden.
So, yes. The short answer is yes. It's going to be a completely different policy. but it's going to crumble against the harsh reality of the Middle East. The Biden administration appears wedded to a pre-Trump policy which sees the Palestinians as the key to Middle East peace, but fails to hold them accountable for all their previous agreements, and seeks to cozy up to Iran and wants to rejoin the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which is the Iran nuclear deal. And as I said, Robert Malley, who is in charge, is the person who negotiated the Iran nuclear deal under Obama, and obviously has a vested interest in promoting it again, even though Israel views the Iran nuclear deal as an existential threat. Now, for 50 years prior to Trump, these sort of Palestinian-centric, hostile to Israel policies were pursued, and it bought the United States nothing in terms of influence in the region. It cost the American people trillions of dollars in aid to unreliable, ungrateful regimes like Pakistan and the Palestinians, and endless wars in Iran and Iraq. And this is the policy, this failed policy, which Biden seeks to go back to.
Okay, it's just drives me crazy that this so-called nuclear deal is even being contemplated getting into. I thought Trump made an excellent rationale for getting out of it. Can you briefly go over why Trump wanted out of it and why Obama wanted it and why now Biden wants to get back into it?
Okay, well, President Trump was an outsider, not a politician, and he decided to look at the Middle East from a new eyes. And he didn't accept the dogmas of the State Department Arabists, but he rethought the entire Middle East, and he met with very great and rapid success, not only on the Iran nuclear deal, but in other ways, which I'll describe. So in very short order, he took apart and destroyed the ISIS caliphate. He withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal. He brought about real peace between Israel and 4 Arab countries under the Abraham Accords, and he did this all with virtually no American investment or loss of life. Above all, President Trump recognized Israel as our key ally in the region, as the only reliable and stable country, and he put it back at the center of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, where it belongs. He rewarded Israel's loyalty to the United States over decades by recognizing her sovereignty over Jerusalem, by recognizing her sovereignty over the Golan Heights, by moving the United States' embassy to Jerusalem. And despite all the dire warnings of the State Department and the talking heads on the media, the sky didn't fall.
Nothing happened. I mean, it wasn't that the sky didn't fall. It was nothing.
Oh, it's more than that. The Abraham Accords are a result of this change in policy because the Arab world for the first time saw Israel as a fact that they cannot avoid, they cannot ignore, and that is here to stay. And they decided to make their peace with her. And this has been a sea change in Arab-Israeli relations. This has been a very positive thing, which Biden apparently has no interest in pursuing simply because it was Trump's policy.
Well, why, maybe you don't know, but why did Obama want to go into this, given the fact that, as Bibi Netanyahu says, it paves the way for them for atomic weapons?
President Obama's policy, which President Biden is following, saw Iran as a sort of contra power to ISIS and the Sunni radicals because Iran is Shia, and they felt that they could use it as a balance against the Sunni. What they didn't understand is that that is true. They are antithetical to the Sunni, but they are equally radical, at least as dangerous, maybe more so. And so, they made a pact with one devil as opposed to another devil. It bought the United States nothing. It certainly hasn't modified Iranian behavior. Since President Biden is president, they have attacked U.S. bases in the Middle East at least 3 times that I know of. And none of this cozying up to Iran has helped the United States in any way.
Do you have any idea why Iran always seems to get away with terrible things, killing 241 Marines in Lebanon, blowing up 2 embassies in Africa, blowing up the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires? what they do in the Gulf with attacking tankers. Why do they always seem to get away with it when it seems so clear that they shouldn't get away with it? And I'm going to let you think about that because we're coming up on the first break of today's show. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum here on 960 The Patriot. My name is William Wolf. I'm certainly glad that you're with us today. Devin Sper is my guest today. And as always, I ask you to help me bring the show to you. The best way to do that, of course, is by using the services of my advertisers. But each time you do, you need to tell them you're doing so because they advertise on this program. They need to know that their advertising dollars are well spent. Often it costs you nothing to support the show. What I mean by that is switch where you're spending your money from somebody who does not advertise to somebody who does. I know each and every one of the advertisers personally. I know they give great goods and services, so you'll be very happy with the results of your purchases. Also, please spread the word about this show. It is available everywhere in the world on my website. It's now a little bit different, MiddleEastRadioForum.com. It's no longer .org. It's MiddleEastRadioForum.com. The show is available everywhere in the world on the internet. Also, you can listen to podcasts of old shows 24/7, and the show is rebroadcast every Saturday evening on this program, on this station at 9 p.m. So you have many ways to listen to the show. You have many ways to spread the word about this show. A lot of people would love to listen. Perhaps they just don't know about it. So I'm going to ask you to please spread the word about Middle East Radio Forum so as many people as possible can listen. I very much appreciate the fact that you're listening to my voice now, and I look forward to having some questions. As I said, I've got 4 copies of Devin's book, The Future of Israel, to give away, no charge whatsoever, to the first 4 questions that are pertinent. So please call in before the end of the show. Please stay with us. We're right back with my special guest, Devin Sper. Dassault and Macros are my business and personal CPAs for a good reason. Prompt and accurate work means I trust them with all my accounting needs. Conveniently located just off the 51 freeway at 3519 East Shea Boulevard, Suite 122, give them a call and see what they can do for you. 602-996-8885. That's Dassault and Macros, 602-996-8885. There are a lot of great Mexican restaurants in Phoenix, but I am very particular. When I want the best Mexican lunch or dinner, I head straight to Mi Patio on the southeast corner of 7th Avenue in Osborne. They serve all your favorite dishes and only use pure vegetable oil in their cooking. Mi Patio is sure to become your favorite Mexican restaurant too. That's Mi Patio Mexican Restaurant on the southeast corner of 7th Avenue in Osborne. Tell them that William Wolf sent you there. Watermark Wealth Strategies and Watermark Wealth Planning offices at 11333 North Scottsdale Road, Suite 295 in Scottsdale. Has been a loyal sponsor of this program since its start. They specialize in wealth retention, estate, and legacy planning. Watermark has been a leader in the Valley, and its members have been together for over 17 years. Founding partner Carmen Cercone has over 36 years of experience in tax, investment, and estate planning issues affecting retirees and their assets. They offer comprehensive planning that has helped assist families through the process of identifying client objectives and concerns and constructing a strategic plan to address tax, risk, and legacy issues. Consultations are complimentary, and we encourage you to contact Allison Porter at 480-442-3989 to schedule. Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, an affiliate of Kestra Investment Services. Watermark Wealth Strategies, LLC is not affiliated with Kestra Investment Services or Kestra Advisory Services. How do you choose your accident injury attorney? If you need heart surgery, do you choose your surgeon from seeing an ad on TV or a billboard? Of course not. Choosing your attorney also should not be done so casually and without thought. I do not advertise on TV or billboards, but only on this radio show. I give all clients personal attention. Your phone calls are never intercepted by some untrained assistant. I take all calls if I am available or return calls at my earliest opportunity. I was named Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association 2 years ago and have 48 years of experience. So think about it and choose your accident attorney wisely. My number is 602-279-1914, and my office is located at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. I personally welcome your call. Again, 602-279-1914.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com. Now back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to today's edition of Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. My special guest today is Devin Sper. He wrote a terrific book, The Future of Israel. As I mentioned before, I've got 4 copies to give away to first 4 callers with relevant questions. You'll have to pick it up at my office. I hope that's not a problem. 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. But there will be 4 available. So, Devin, let's pick up with what we were talking about before. First of all, can you describe what the nuclear deal was and who wanted it?
Very briefly, the United States wanted to see if they could make a sort of ally of Iran under the Obama administration, and they didn't succeed, but their idea was that they could use Iran as a counterweight against ISIS. It turned out that the head of ISIS is living in Iran, so that was a false assumption. In any case, the deal limited what Iran could produce in nuclear weapons for a period of about 10 years, but then it allowed them to produce whatever they want, and basically, in short, gave them a path to a nuclear weapon that would be accepted by the whole world. And the Iranians only had to wait till the agreement expired, and they would be legally allowed to have a nuclear weapon. If Israel were to attack their nuclear program, Israel would be in violation of international law, not Iran at that point. And so Israel was dead set against this agreement, and Israel has done everything to resist it, and President Trump tore up the agreement because he understood the problem with it. Also, the Iranian nuclear agreement did not cover their missile program, their aggressive behavior in Yemen, their sponsorship of terrorism all over the world. And so it didn't really cover the issues that mattered.
And the idea of allowing them to get a path to atomic weapons is unbelievable. They continue to call the United States the Great Satan and Israel the Little Satan, and they've openly said they're going to destroy Israel, certainly. So I can't even imagine why they're allowed to get away with what they are getting away with. And that's what I was asking about earlier. I mentioned the Marine barracks, the bombings of the U.S. embassies in Africa, the bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, and the attacking tankers in the Persian Gulf, etc. They seem to be Teflon. Nothing ever sticks to them.
Like any totalitarian aggressive regime, they're going to see what they can get away with in their aggression. And if there is a lack of reaction, they're going to become more aggressive. And they know that the Obama and Biden administration are bluffing, and that they want very much a deal for the sake of a deal, like the nuclear deal, so they can say that diplomacy has achieved something, and they're not that interested in the long-term results. So Iran knows it can get away with this, and it does. Now, under President Trump, they did not get away with it. Under President Trump, he imposed very harsh sanctions on Iran, which have hurt the regime very badly economically, and that's why the regime is really on its back. And to release the pressure from them now and restore the Iranian nuclear deal makes no sense at all.
But Biden is doing that, and I don't know if he has no mentation or the people who are advising him have none, or they have an agenda we're not aware of. I don't know.
We're aware of it. It's the very same people who negotiated the agreement in the first place with Iran, and they want to be able to say that they've achieved something diplomatically. In other words, it's diplomacy for the sake of diplomacy, for putting a feather in their cap. In the real world, it has consequences that are not of interest to them.
Okay, we have a caller coming in. We'll take that call shortly, but I want to ask you first. President Trump recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and Israel, of course, annexed that many years ago. However, in a recent CNN interview, Biden's new Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, questioned the legality of that sovereignty and indicated that the U.S. might revoke that recognition at some point. What is your opinion on this?
My opinion is that the Golan Heights doesn't belong to Antony Blinken. Blinken did the same thing as John Kerry did when he negotiated over the Golan Heights with Sergei Lavrov of Russia, as if it's his to give away. They want to score diplomatic points with hostile regimes and pay in Israeli coin. But the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said then with John Kerry and said again now with Blinken that the Golan Heights will remain forever a part of Israel. And so they're simply living in some sort of delusion that they can give away the Golan Heights. It doesn't belong to Syria anymore, which used it for many years as a base from which to attack Israel. And if you use territory to attack another country, you lose your right to that territory. And it doesn't belong to Iran and Hezbollah, who are trying to entrench themselves there. The Golan Heights was won by Israel, paid a very high price in blood for it after they were attacked from the Golan in 1967 by Syria. And the Golan Heights belongs to the Israeli people, who require it for their survival and who have paid for it with their blood.
And I know that after it was captured in 1967, they found that the kindergartens, the schools were the main targets of them. The gunners would shoot down at the farmers and the kibbutzim.
Well, for years, they terrorized Israel from the heights, for the Galilee from the heights above. They would simply shell cars driving along a highway, schools, anything they wanted for decades. And finally, when they attacked in 1967, there was a very hard battle. Israel had to fight its way up the heights, and they took it for Israel. And since then, basically the border has been peaceful since the 73 war.
Right. Okay, we do have a first question. Jock from Scottsdale. Jock, go ahead. You're on the air.
Thank you. I think in the next 4 years, China is going to play a significant role in Iran and try to use Iran maybe as a proxy against the United States. And I worry significantly about the electromagnetic pulse bomb that I think China could facilitate Iran getting that and their nuclear weapons to take that and get over to the United States and really cripple this country. And if they did that, then Israel would be the next. I don't think they're going to go after Israel first. I'm interested in your thoughts.
Okay, Devin, I can give you about a minute, then you can finish your response if necessary after the break.
Okay, no, Jock, your worries are well-founded. Countries like China and Russia use proxies like Iran and North Korea to do their dirty work. So if the United States or Israel reacts, it's not China or Russia who feels the pain. And these countries have insane radical regimes in both cases, and so they use them to threaten the United States to do horrible things like an electromagnetic weapon, which would be devastating for the United States. And whereas China wouldn't take that risk, they very well could use Iran or North Korea or some other country as a proxy.
Okay. Again, thanks for that question, Jock. Very good question. You've got your book. I'll get it to you. We're coming up the next break. We have these 3 hard breaks during the course of the show. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum here on 960 The Patriot. My name is William Wolf. I'm your host today. I alternate most Sundays with Mayor Jolovitz, although sometimes we do 2 in a row, etc. But we try to divide it up even. And I very much appreciate the fact that he takes some of the time to do the show, because it became impossible for me to be here every Sunday. Remember, we're in the 18th year of Middle East Radio Forum. I love doing it, but I'm one human being, and I very much appreciate Mayor taking over part of the burden. In any event, please continue to help me bring the show by using the services of the advertisers. People have asked how can they help without being able to use the advertisers. Well, direct donations are certainly welcome. I suggest $52 a year, $52 because there's 52 weeks in a year. If the show is worth listening to, it ought to be worth $1. So $52, send it to me, William J. Wolf, at my office, 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203, Phoenix, Arizona 85020. Again, 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203, Phoenix, Arizona 85020. But the main way to help me bring the show to you is the advertisers. Use the services of the advertisers, because that is the best way. They're with me each and every Sunday, and that's how the show is brought to you. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with my very special guest today, Devin Sper. For 30 years, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership has worked to help make American Jews feel safe and secure. We know that never again is a verb, and it needs your backing. Go to jpfo.org, that's jpfo.org, and learn what Defense of Freedom is really about. When government wants your guns but keeps their own, they are not on your side. jpfo.org, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Watermark Wealth Strategies and Watermark Wealth Planning offices at 11333 North Scottsdale Road, Suite 295 in Scottsdale. Has been a loyal sponsor of this program since its start. They specialize in wealth retention, estate, and legacy planning. Watermark has been a leader in the Valley, and its members have been together for over 17 years. Founding partner Carmen Cercone has over 36 years of experience in tax, investment, and estate planning issues affecting retirees and their assets. They offer comprehensive planning that has helped assist families through the process of identifying client objectives and concerns and constructing a strategic plan to address tax, risk, and legacy issues. Consultations are complimentary, and we encourage you to contact Allison Porter at 480-442-3989 to schedule. Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, an affiliate of Kestra Investment Services. Watermark Wealth Strategies, LLC is not affiliated with Kestra Investment Services or Kestra Advisory Services. Maryland Deli and Mini Mart on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland is much more than just a great Shell station and mini mart. Great cook-to-order food, different flavors of coffee and tea, beer and fine wine, including kosher wine, round out a wonderful one-stop shopping experience. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum, check them out on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland and Phoenix. That's Maryland Deli and Mini Mart, 602-277-6269. Have you been injured in an auto accident or on the job? At Complete Injury Management, we have decades of experience with auto accidents and work-related injuries. Call for valley-wide same-day treatment for chiropractic care, primary care, pain management, orthopedic surgery, counseling, and physical therapy. Our offices utilize the most advanced techniques to achieve optimal recovery. Call 602-497-4967 to get scheduled today. Find us on the web at www.cimarizona.com.
Are you vegetarian or vegan? Boy, do we have the restaurant for you. Veggie Village at 1255 East Northern in Phoenix, a terrific restaurant. Chicken, shrimp, calamari, mutton, and fish, all made from plants, a delight to your taste buds. This is a really exceptional restaurant. Closed on Sunday, but otherwise 6 days of terrific dishes. That's Veggie Village, 1255 East Northern, or call them at 602-944-1088.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free, 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com. Now back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to today's very interesting and important edition of Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. My special guest is Devin Sper, author of The Future of Israel, and I've mentioned I'm giving away 4 copies. We've got questions I'm going to ask, but we do have 2 callers listening. Let's take them in order. Steve from Northwest Phoenix. Steve is a loyal listener, probably for the entire length of the show. Steve, I very much appreciate your loyalty to the show. Go ahead and ask your question.
Got a question here. History has shown that perceived weak leaders, like Chamberlain, these weak leaders preceded a major conflict. The Chinese are doing something in the Taiwan Strait. Iran is getting bolstered by attacking shipping. Could we see a major conflict even before the Israeli elections?
Well, I agree with the premise of your question, which is weakness invites aggression. And there is no doubt that Iran is looking for openings and will see diplomacy as weakness and any concessions as weakness, and they will pocket them and go on. And it is possible. The one thing deterring it somewhat is Iran is really economically on its back because of the sanctions that President Trump imposed. And so far, President Biden hasn't removed those sanctions because he does understand that they're a lever and he wants to get them to the table talking. So they're not on their best behavior, but they're not as bad as they could be. And I don't think there would be anything prior to the Israeli elections, but I think in the not too distant future, you can have a war with Iran. Another reason you might have a war with Iran is that the Israelis don't trust the Biden administration regarding the nuclear agreement. And they therefore have openly said that they are going to take care of business. Netanyahu has said this, the chief of staff, and the defense minister Gantz recently said this. And they're warning the United States that there will be consequences if they rejoin the nuclear agreement.
Okay, thanks for the question, Steve. You got a book coming. Let's quickly go to Gary from Mesa. Gary, ask your question, please.
Yeah, God bless your program. I can't live without it. When you first came on the air, I had hair. So my question is, the city governments like Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and some of the other major cities, are they in concert with protecting Israel's interests, or do a lot of secular nonsense in those places?
Well, the governments of each city vary very much depending on the city. Tel Aviv is more secular, Jerusalem is more religious. But overall, just to answer your question in a broad way, things have changed very much in Israel. And things have shifted to the right for many years. So in the current election, according to polls, there is an anti-Netanyahu faction and a pro-Netanyahu faction that's almost evenly split. But don't let that confuse you as to where the public is, because if you look at the ideology, about 80% of the parties are right-wing today. And the Peace Now left has been completely discredited in Israel following the first and second Intifada, when Israel gave away land in Gaza and got missiles in return. And so the Israelis today are by and large, and especially the youth, patriotic. They love their country. They're not down on their country. And even the left today has returned to a sort of patriotism the way the old Labor Party used to be. They may have left-wing economic policies and social policies, but there isn't much division in Israel over foreign policy as there once was. There's no delusion anymore in Israel that giving away things to their enemies is going to achieve peace. They no longer believe that.
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Gary. You get your book. Just contact my office and you can get your book. We're coming up on the next break, Devin, so I'm going to not ask a question right now, but it is luckily the longest segment of the hour, so we'll have plenty of time. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum here on 960 The Patriot. My name is William Wolf. I'm your host today. I alternate with Mayor Jolovitz, terrific host also. I like the fact that he does help me. It helps me bring the show to you. This show is now in the 18th year of broadcast. Hard to believe, but yes, in the 18th year of broadcast, the longest-running brokerage show in the history of the state of Arizona. So please continue to help me bring the show to you. The lifeblood, of course, is my advertisers. So I need you to please use their services. Let them know you're doing so because they advertise on this program. They're with me each and every Sunday. Without advertisers, no Middle East Radio Forum. And also, you'll get great goods and services from them. I know each and every one of them personally, and I know they'll be taking care of you very, very well. And please do spread the word about this show, available every Sunday at noon here on 960 The Patriot. Worldwide, it's available on my website, MiddleEastRadioForum.com. Change the name a little bit, it's now.com, MiddleEastRadioForum.com. And the show is also rebroadcast every Saturday night on this program, on the show rather. The station, it's at 9 o'clock every Saturday evening. So please listen again if you like, but you can also listen to podcasts 24/7 on the website. Podcasts, I've got several hundred shows for your listening pleasure and enjoyment. I hope it's, anyway, pleasant and enjoyable. At least you're learning a lot if you listen to Middle East Radio Forum. People have asked how they can help the show if they can't use the services, the advertisers. Just send me a check to William J. Wolf at my office, 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203, Phoenix, Arizona, 85020. The address again, 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203, Phoenix, Arizona 85020. Please stay with us. We'll be right back with Devin Sper.
Document Solutions of the Valley offers one of the lowest prices for your printer cartridge needs. Aside from free delivery, we even offer free cleaning for your office or personal printers. Document Solutions is a locally owned and employer-operated company that has been servicing Arizona companies' needs for over 36 years. For more information or printer cartridge pricing, call 623-252-8282 and ask for Richard. Again, that's 623-252-8282 and get treated like family.
Maryland Deli and Mini Mart on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland is much more than just a great Shell station and mini mart. Great cook-to-order food, different flavors of coffee and tea, beer and fine wine, including kosher wine, round out a wonderful one-stop shopping experience. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum, check them out on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland and Phoenix. That's Maryland Deli and Mini Mart, 602-277-6269. Cherry Blossom Noodle Cafe has terrific sushi, salads, rice and noodle dishes, soup, and even great pasta. On the northwest corner of 10th Street and Camelback, it will become your favorite Asian restaurant. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum for more than 10 years, it is simply the best place for a great Asian lunch or dinner. That's Cherry Blossom Noodle Cafe on the northwest corner of 10th Street and Camelback. Tell them that William Wolf sent you there. Telephone 602-248-9090. Texas Grill on the northeast corner of Bethany Home Road and 16th Street has been my favorite steakhouse for 31 years. Great food, especially their chicken fried steak, as well as daily specials in a comfortable setting, keeps me coming back for more. You just have to try it for yourself. Also a great Sunday brunch starting at 10 in the morning. That's Texas Grill on the northeast corner of Bethany Home Road and 16th Street. Give them a try and you will have a new favorite steakhouse too. My name is William J. Wolf, host of Middle East Radio Forum since 2003. As you may know, I am a personal injury attorney in practice since 1971. I was just awarded the high honor of Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association. I handle all types of personal injury and wrongful death cases. Unlike many other attorneys, especially the high-volume TV advertising attorneys, I do go to court if necessary to obtain the best possible resolution for all my clients. It is often impossible to obtain the best possible result if your lawyer does not have the reputation of being willing to go to court on all matters. If you have a claim, please call me for a free initial consultation at 602-279-1914. My office is at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. Again, call 602-279-1914. I look forward to meeting you and making sure that you obtain the best possible recovery. Call 602-279-1914 and please continue to support Middle East Radio Forum.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com. Now back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to the final segment of today's Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. My guest in studio is Devin Sper, and we have one more book to give away. We've had 3 questions. The 4th question will get a copy of Devin's book, The Future of Israel. Devin, we're talking about the nuclear deal, and it appears that Biden wants to rejoin, but why hasn't the Biden administration been able to rejoin the nuclear deal if he wants to do it?
Very good question, and the basic answer is because of the unremitting hostility of Iran. As far as Iran is concerned, the United States is the great Satan. They don't differentiate between Republicans and Democrats too much, and they would like the sanctions removed, but they're not going to give anything in return. So as soon as Biden was elected, despite his rhetoric that he wants to deal with Iran, they shelled an American base, if you remember, in Anbar province in Iraq. Biden retaliated, for which I give him credit, but he thought that would send a message, but they simply retaliated again a number of times since then. And the Biden administration has not reacted, which is not good. And instead, they keep making noises about diplomacy. And Iran takes this as weakness. And as long as they sense weakness, they're never going to change their tone. They're never going to change their tone at all. This is a regime that believes in an apocalyptic, radical form of Islam that requires an apocalypse. It requires an apocalypse. They're seeking an apocalypse. So they're not seeking peace. It's not their theology. And the Biden administration simply, like the Obama administration before it, simply doesn't understand who you're dealing with. There are enemies with whom you can make peace. And there are enemies like Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, or the mullahs in Iran, who you have to fight. And there's a difference between the two.
And just for the audience's verification, when we use the term Iran, it's just for speed. It's actually the Islamic Republic of Iran. I know Carl Goldberg is very good about making sure that everybody understands it's the Islamic Republic of Iran, not just Iran. But we just say Iran just for brevity here. Okay, Devin, President Trump successfully brought about the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations between the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, and Israel. Other Arab countries appear to have been on the brink of joining these accords. Will the Biden administration continue to promote them? And if not, why not?
The short answer is no, simply because the Biden administration seems intent on reversing every Trump policy, successful or not. But what they do not seem to grasp is that the Abraham Accords have brought about a sea change in Arab attitudes towards Israel and the Middle East. In other words, that ship has already sailed. And the idea that they can dial it back and go back to the policy of everything centering around the Palestinians and giving them a veto over peace in the Middle East isn't going to fly. Countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Republic, are no longer willing to give the Palestinian radicals a veto power over their progress. They want to do business with Israel. They see Israel as a potential partner against Iran. They have a common enemy. They no longer see Israel as the problem. So this has been a real peace. Let me explain that this is not like the Oslo Accords, in which Israel was forced to give or pressured to give land for peace, and in return got only missiles and terror. This is a real peace, a warm peace. Tens of thousands of Israelis have already visited the United Arab Emirates. The next time I'm in Israel, I plan to go there. It's a $300 3-hour flight. It's a fascinating country, and the Israelis are being welcomed by the people there warmly and with open arms. Together with the United Arab Emirates, Israel, also with Egypt, with Greece, with Cyprus, are working together on an oil pipeline in the Mediterranean and against Turkish aggression in the Mediterranean. And Turkey itself, which has been led by Erdogan, who's been very hostile to Israel for many years, also now seeks to restore good relations with Israel because there's been a sea change. They all understand Israel is here to stay. Israel is something you have to deal with. And as such, they no longer hope to destroy it, but want to work with it. And I'll tell you something very interesting, Bill. Even in Israel, there's been a big shift among the Israeli Arabs. So there are Israeli Arab parties in the Knesset that have been basically hostile to the state of Israel. But Israel's a democracy, and they have 15 seats in the Knesset. But they've never joined the government. They're hostile to the country. There is a new Arab party that's split away based on the Islamic League, which is a radical Islamic party led by a man named Mansour Abbas. And he now has taken a different position. He says he will make a coalition with Netanyahu or whoever's in power in order to gain benefits for his community. In other words, he's talking like a standard politician, and that's the way politics should work. He said the left has never done anything for the Arabs in Israel, and he's happy to sit with Netanyahu. It's his country too. And I think that's a blessing for Israel and for the Arab community in Israel.
Well, I would think that these Arab countries are going to understand how it's to their benefit to get into these agreements with Israel. Only benefit in terms of economics, agriculture, finance, anything you can think of. Having a relationship with Israel is going to work toward their benefit. And I think there's no way to avoid seeing that. And I think Now that it's been established, there's no going back because they're not going to give up these benefits. And I think other Arab countries, you say there might be on the brink of doing it. I think they're going to do it because it's only beneficial to them.
I want to agree with you and tell you that that they do think that way, and that this is going to go forward. And the Biden's administration's idea that they're going to go back to a policy which gives veto power to the PLO or Hamas is not going to fly. Saudi Arabia has cut off Hamas from funding. They want nothing to do with Hamas. Neither does Egypt. They know that these people are troubled, that they're not looking for peace. They're only they're a nihilist movement looking to destroy. And they have caused all kinds of problems for all these years in the Middle East. And the Middle East has moved on. So the Biden administration is simply not realistic and not getting a grasp on what's going on. You know, these same people under Obama could argue that a policy of friendliness to Iran might reap results. It was wrong, but there was a reason, perhaps theoretically, to believe that. Now we've tried that. That's failed. The Abraham Accords have worked. And to abandon a successful policy and go back to a failed policy makes no sense at all.
Of course, a lot of things make no sense in U.S. politics, but let's hope that's not part of it. If the Biden administration's Middle East policies are doomed to fail, as you say, might they not learn from this and return to President Trump's successful Mideast policies? The problem, of course, is anything Trump they don't want. They don't want to give him any credit. They don't give him credit for this warp speed, getting these vaccines done with a minimum of delay. These vaccines are absolutely terrific, and that we really owe President Trump for getting these vaccines out. Do you really think that they're going to not rejoin? And I think they won't, just because they would have to acknowledge that President Trump did something good.
Absolutely right, and it's more than that. It's not only that President Trump was successful. They would have to acknowledge that their previous policies under Obama administration and for the last 50 years were a failure. For Robert Malley to acknowledge that the JSOP, that the Iran nuclear deal was a failure, that would be to acknowledge his own failure. So he's not going to do that. They're never going to acknowledge that pressuring Israel to give away strategic territory was a mistake, because they would be responsible for the 10,000 Israelis who have died as a result. And so they're never going to admit that. They are going to compound their failure because they can't admit it. So can they ever learn from this? I would say this. If after 50 years prior to Trump of failed U.S. Middle East policy, they haven't figured it out, then I don't have a lot of hopes that they will figure it out going forward.
You know, any discussion of a so-called two-state solution, it just drives me crazy. I mean, these people have to be deaf, dumb, and stupid not to understand there cannot be a two-state solution with people who only want you and your family dead. I mean, they openly say from the river to the sea, they teach their children to want to be shahids, whatever the term is, shahids, to kill themselves if they can kill Jews. How do you enter into a two-state solution with people who only want you and your family dead? It's not going to happen, and I just don't understand why it keeps coming up. I mean, they're still talking about it. You have these so-called Jewish groups who advocate this here in the United States. I don't know if they're doing that in Israel anymore, but still here in the United States, there are so-called Jewish groups who advocate the insanity and the stupidity of a two-state solution.
Well, this is the fundamental problem. It's not that theoretically after 67, there couldn't have been a compromise where Israel and even the Palestinians compromised over the land. That's not theoretically impossible. The problem is that they latched onto, of all things, the PLO, the worst terrorist organization in the world, and empowered them and set Yasser Arafat up as president of this country, not the moderates, but Yasser Arafat, so that he ran the school system, which indoctrinates people in hate. He ran the media and is now his followers, Abbas and Hamas, who's even worse. And when you turn people in a territory over to a terrorist organization, then that's what you can expect. So the whole thing was wrong-headed from the beginning and was doomed to failure.
And, you know, as Mayor Jalovitz has often pointed out, and I have pointed out, the PLO was formed in 1964, 3 years before Israel acquired the Golan, what they call the West Bank, actually Judea and Samaria, the Sinai and Gaza. What was the PLO supposed to liberate 3 years before Israel took over that territory? Well, obviously, it's all of Israel, and that just dovetails perfectly with the education they give to their children and what they publicly say. They want the river to the sea, which means the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. In other words, they want everything. They want a Judenrein, which means free of Jews. They want all Israelis and all Jews dead. So how do you get into an agreement with such a people?
You can get an agreement with such a people if they change their point of view. The problem is that they have maintained that point of view since 1948 and have not been forced by the world to change it. You know, I was asked a question at a debate at ASU by somebody who said, well, what will happen if the Palestinians never recognize Israel? And I told him, and it's still true today, that they will continue to lose out, as they have till now, and they will ultimately end up with nothing. So if you have a maximalist position, as they do, and you refuse to recognize that the Jews have a history in the land of Israel too, and you refuse to recognize that there ever was a temple in Jerusalem the way Arafat did, and you refuse to acknowledge any Jewish rights in the land and say that Palestinians have exclusive rights in the land, then ultimately you're going to end up with nothing. And that's where the thing stands.
Okay. Do you have any idea why these so-called Jewish groups continue to push for a two-state solution? They can't be so stupid they don't realize the history and what they're being said now.
You know, that's a very good question. And I used to think I know the answer, and I used to think it was because they want peace. And people, you know, will delude themselves, and they want peace so much that they hope for peace and thought that it must be, it's very human to say it must be something I'm doing. And if only I would give them land or do this concession, maybe they would love us and there'd be peace. But the reason I no longer believe that, Bill, is because these same people oppose the Abraham Accords. These same people who have all the time been saying that people like you and I are against peace, they do not support the Abraham Accords, which are real peace. And that tells me that peace is not the real issue with them.
What did they say was the reason they don't support it?
In my heart of hearts, I believe that they fully identify with our enemies. It is like the Stockholm Syndrome, where somebody starts to identify with their kidnapper because they feel it gives them control over the situation. But I can tell you this, Bill, the good news. There are many American Jews who still parrot those things, but there is almost nobody in Israel who feels that way.
You know, it's amazing that they don't go to school on what happened with Gaza. Gaza, to me, is the perfect example about what happens when you give land to people who want you dead. All it gets you is terrorism. It doesn't give you any peace whatsoever. I can give you one more minute, Devin.
Actually, you've hit the nail on the head, because Gaza was the turning point. Until Gaza, there was half of the Israelis who believed, as many American Jews do, that if only Israel would give away territory, everything would be fine. And when they gave away Gaza, not only gave away Gaza, but forcibly removed 10,000 Jews from Gaza to